Seated. Thank you to our sponsors tonight. So we've got a new set of sponsors for this year. So we have Cloud Health speaking tonight and Dynatrace. So thanks to our sponsors for helping us put this on every month, and thank you all for coming. So tonight, usual format. Hey guys. So we got tonight normal. We're going to start with introductions, which is this, and then we're going to do David from PolarSeven is going to give a CI/CD pipeline on AWS demo for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to Kevin from Dynatrace. Then we're going to break for networking and beers, and then we're going to come back to Richard from Cloud Health, who's feeling 100%, I think. Well, 97%? Close to it. Excellent. So with that, David, I will hand over to you. And I think, so we had some fun stuffing around laptops. I don't know if you saw that, but I think we're right. So should be all systems go. So, there you go. There's the clicker. Okay. Good stuff. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Daryl. Welcome, everyone. I thought tonight I might do something DevOpsy. And then I thought, let's do CI/CD pipeline. And I do have some nice slides to fall back on. And then I thought, the hell with it, let's do a live demo. And so we're going to do a live demo. We're going to show a little web page, not very. Where is it coming? There you go. As you'll see, that's not particularly exciting. But what we're going to do, we're going to put this through Amazon AWS code pipeline, and we're going to make some changes. We're going to push this out. What's going to initiate this whole thing is I go into my other computer here, and I've already committed this. I'm just going to push this to a master branch, and then kick the whole thing off. So what I'll do here is I'll get the code build page up, which you'll see here. Now I'll blow this up a little bit in a minute. But sorry, code pipeline. Now code pipeline, we've got these various actions we've defined. You get about 5 or 6 actions that you can use. We're using source, build, and deploy. We can also add in a test stage into here, and there's another one, an approval stage. And there's also an invoke you can have if you want to use Lambda. So, without further ado, let's start this whole thing off.
Sorry, who here has used pipeline? Has anybody used pipeline? Yeah? A few? Yeah?
So what I'm doing on here, because I don't want this code base is so exciting, I didn't want to show it to you. I'm just going to do a push to origin. And what we're going to do here is just blow this up a little bit. So the first step here is it's going to be the source. Now this has been set up to go to GitHub, but you could also use S3 buckets, or you could use code commit. And I just tell this the repo, the account, the branch is important, and I'll give it a token. And there's a webhook, and this will pick this up fairly soon. Let's just make sure that we're through. Yep. So the first step is that this is going to kick off the source part of this, and that's going to download all the code from the GitHub repository, and then it's going to create an artifact and to put that into S3. Now the way this works is that S3 is going to be used as a state store between all the different stages. So you start one stage, you put something into S3, and that kicks off the next stage, that goes off to S3, gets it, and yeah, there we go. It's working.
Progress.
That's good. So you can see here it's in progress. This won't take very long. So it's pulling all that code down now and it's putting it into S3. So let's just push that up a little bit. We're going to go with the next stage, which is the build stage. Now, again, your code pipeline is just an orchestration software. It gives you all these different choices. At the moment, we're using code build here. You could use an EC2 instance with Jenkins on it. You could use Solano CI, but we've decided to go with code build. What code build will do is it creates a container, and it's a managed container, so you don't have to worry about any clusters or anything. You also get a choice of what type of container you want. Now, if you're going to be creating a Node application, or Java application, or Python application, you can choose a specific image for that. And it gives you quite a wide range of images. You can have CentOS or Ubuntu. In this case, what we're going to be deploying to is Amazon ECS, so we need to build a container. So the container that we're going to use in the code build is a Docker container. So it's a container which has Docker in it, so it can create another container image. So that's what's building at the moment. Now, let's make sure I don't fall over myself here. If we have a look here, yeah, this will take us to the actual code builder part, and you can see it's going through different steps, and at each one it tells you whether it succeeds or whether it fails. Now, if it fails, it's going to tell you why. There's also, when you go back to the code pipeline, there's a log as well that you can look at, so you can see why something fails. Okay, so this is the longest part of it, even though this is really all we're doing is one web page, but we are building a container. And if it was a Node instance, you might be doing npm install, that can take quite a while. As I said, this is going to go into an Amazon ECS container. We've got one container running, going back and forth here, and if we have a look here, you'll see this is ECS, and you can see we've got one service, we've got one running task, which is a container, and this is running in our cluster, which has got 2 container instances. Now, at the moment, that's all running very nicely, 1.1. What will happen is when that container gets, the container image gets built, that'll get wrapped up, sorry, they won't, that'll get put into Amazon Elastic Container repository, sorry, ECR, yes, that's the container repository. That gets put into the repository, and what happens is you'll get a file which will have all the metadata about that image, and that gets put into S3. So the next step gets kicked off, which is the ECS, and the ECS will go and get that file, and that tells it what that container image it needs to load. So let's go back to our code pipeline and see where it's at. Okay, it's now gone on to the deploy stage, as you can see. We'll go back to the ECS, because this is where all the action's going to be happening. Now this is, okay, it's already brought up an extra task. So now we've got 2 running tasks. This will take a couple of minutes, and what will happen is that once that first container stabilizes, the second one will get killed off. So the first container we got there has got our old web page, and this container, the new one, has got our new web page. Now, I've included on the web page some links to, first of all, these will be to Git repositories where the CloudFormation scripts are that you can use. These are AWS Labs CloudFormation scripts, so they're readily available. You can use those to create this whole infrastructure here, pipeline, ECS, load balancers, all the permissions, everything. You just press the button and it does it all for you. And there's also another repository which actually has the application in it. So if you go and grab both of those, and if you are sort of new to CI/CD or you don't know too much about it, I guarantee you if you run these scripts and you play around with them, you'll know a lot more than most people will. It's a really good introduction to these scripts.
So
okay.
Where did you say the script from it? Sorry. Where did the
I'll show you I've got a, just a minute. So, as you'll see, there's the old web page now.
Divine inspiration.
And there you go, there's a new one. If you want to, it's called cicd.polarseven.com. So we'll leave this up for another day or so. So you can go on here, and these are the links to the repositories. As I said, these are AWS labs, AWS, and also some other third parties. They're doing lots and lots of scripts now, more and more scripts than before. They did quick starts and these snippets before, but what they're doing now is amazing. There's loads and loads of scripts that you can use, and then you can just alter them, so you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. Isn't that right, Darryl?
That's right.
Yes. Right. Now, like I've also included on here, PolarSeven are doing webinars once a month, and the last 2 webinars that we did, well, Vinci did one, which is on Kubernetes. That was the last one. And Adam did one on DevOps. Now, I've gone over some of the DevOps tools. If you have a look at the DevOps webinar, that will tell you more about the sort of a general introduction to DevOps. Because DevOps is not just the tools. So that's really it. I've also included what's new in AWS, which we normally have at this slot. So I put that on there so you can go and check for yourselves. So as I said, that's it. CICD.polar7.com is the URL if you want to go and get access to these scripts yourself.
Questions?
Any questions?
So how is this better than anything else that's doing this type of thing?
It's easy. It's really easy to do. That's why. We did put this in the customer side. We used this as a basis. Obviously, lots of changes, but it meant we didn't have to go and write all the scripts. I mean, you know, it's like writing cloud formation scripts. Painful. So if you get something as a really good starting point, and also we do like to use Amazon Web Services tools, not just to be loyal, but often sometimes the tools aren't always the best, but they get better. But the thing is, we use a third party. We don't get AWS service from them. We do. A lot of customers feel quite comfortable with having that. So that's why we use that. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you use custom image?
Yes, yes, you can.
So I can put my
yes.
URL. Right?
Yeah. So if we go back to the code build again, you have a wide range of images you can choose, but you can create an image and use that as well.
From Docker Hub or
yes. Yeah. So, like for instance, say we were just talking about this before. Say you had something you did all the time that was actually took up a lot of time. You could create an image and use that rather than having to go and rebuild everything all the time.
So private repo? Private.
Yes. 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 You can use your own. Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
This CS cluster that you have, you mentioned that you have 2 instances.
Yes.
What type of machine you are using? Do you have any idea about cost?
Oh, no, on this demo I didn't worry about cost. No, I used probably the smallest ones that I could. Now, with the, when you build this with the AWS scripts, they give you the option, but you can't use it yet. You get the option in the parameter list of using Fargate. So if you don't want to manage the cluster yourself, you would use Fargate, but that's not available in this region at the moment.
So your cluster was used with NetMesh. Your ECS cluster was set up and used in NetMesh.
The whole thing was done, yeah. They're all nested stacks. It's one stack, and we just create VPC. It creates the VPC, creates a load balancer, creates the ECS, the service, and then it will go and create a pipeline.
Can I use bifurcate repository?
No, I don't think you can. It's not on the list. When you go in and you have the drop-down list, at the moment you've got code commit, you've got GitHub, and you've also got S3. You can use S3 as a repository. I don't think they've done it yet.
Great. David, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Thank
So if anybody requires any assistance on this, we're all around here in the white t-shirts. Come talk to us. The URL is cicd.polar7.com, and we can assist you with helping that. That's what we do as an AWS partner. So just come talk to us. Thank you for that. Up next, we have Kevin from Dynatrace. Let me just jump through these slides for you.
That's the fallback position.
Here we go. Okay. Yeah, the browser session is still open. Yeah. Cool. So who here is using Dynatrace? Anybody? Yes? Yes, we do. Whoa, we do. Excellent. Kevin, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, can everybody hear me okay? So yeah, I'm going to tell you a bit about monitoring in the AWS environment. I'm from Dynatrace. Yeah, talking about monitoring, because that's all what Dynatrace does, we're wholly and solely monitoring AWS and other environments that you have out there. I want to start a little bit differently. I want to talk about a bit of a mission that we're on, or what I'm on personally. It's some behaviours we've seen in certain environments. Everything I'm going to talk about today is available on the AWS Marketplace. I'm sorry, is that better?
Yeah, we all here? Good, thanks.
Everything I want to talk about today is on the AWS Marketplace, so it's all there at your fingertips. You can use it right away. So I'm going to take you through a few slides to try and set your expectations, or try and change the way you might think about monitoring, the way you might be doing it now, and how effectively like the art of what's possible around the box. And then I'm hoping to do a live demo as well. I really want to show you, because I think tech guys like to see this thing rather than just have a slide there. But the mission one really is stopping war rooms. Now, these might take many different forms, and they might have many different names. They might be incident rooms or even conference calls that everybody jumps on. But what I'm really talking about here is, say, user calls in saying there's having a problem with production, or you have a load test file, or some light on a dashboard goes red, and somebody says, why is that red? Ignore that bit. Then you get more users calling in, and then more lights go red on the dashboard. Get everybody either on a conference call or in a room, we bring all the text together, and everybody has to then bring a bit of information, bring a dashboard, bring some report saying why it's not there. Why it's not me. It can't be me, it must be something else, you've got to look somewhere else. But you've still got this problem, you've still got to figure out where the problem is. The problem is if you're doing that, you bring in the people, the techs, the smart people, you guys, away from what they should be doing, which is innovating, developing products and services and the like for the organisation. You're wasting their time. I never wanted to be involved in these war rooms. I got dragged in lots of times. But I'll just create a dashboard and say, if this goes red, then don't bother me. So, what did it used to look like? What did the monitoring used to look like? Well, it used to be a lot of dashboarding, really lots of dashboarding. You might chart CPU, memory disk, response time on a dashboard. You might actually then put alerts in there to say, all right, when there's a problem or when it goes above 5 seconds, send me an email. Do all these kind of things, and then if you check your application changes and then suddenly you've got to reshift these alerts, you've got to go back in and change them. But what tends to happen when you get an issue in production, lots of things start alerting. You've got an alert storm, and if you're like me, you create a little email rule, drop all these emails into a folder and then delete it every couple of days, because if there's a real problem, somebody can find me. It's true. So yeah, so actually, it's a lot of effort to go into. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have any value, but you know, there's a lot of effort to keep that up to date. The other way is looking at logs, exceptions, events, and things like that. You might be harvesting logs and grabbing logs from whatever tool you might use, and then you look at putting some kind of smarts around what patterns you might see to try and figure out if you've got an issue or if you've got something to worry about. Production, test, or any environment you might have. Now, that kind of worked when your application didn't change that much, when you had these monoliths and when you didn't have the cloud technologies where, you know, we're bringing out, AWS brings out new ways to deploy, ship and run code, AWS, Azure, whatever it is. You know, this is not exhaustive, there's lots and lots of technologies. And it kind of worked then, but now we have to change. So the monitoring, the way we thought about things, we had to transform. Dynatrace themselves, we had to transform. We were a typical software company. We did 2 releases per year. We chucked it over the fence. We'd looked to see what we thought we'd need in the next 6 months and dropped it out. From there, we moved to 26 deployments a year, 500 code deployments per day, and we're just basing that off the feedback we get off you guys who've used Dynatrace in the wild. So we call this monitoring redefined. What do we mean by this? I mean, for me, the forefront of detecting an issue to any environment is looking at what the customer's doing. So what the service the customer receives. So that whether that be on a browser or a mobile app, hybrid app, whatever it is. That could, and your customer could be pure public, could be internal users, could be a B2B type of application. It doesn't matter. We still want to know who they are and what they're doing on the application. So down to every single user interaction with your application. What performance are you actually giving them? What errors are they receiving? Looking at tracing those transactions across the environment. The reason that's important actually was I was signing up for a credit card last week, and I went to this online bank that specialises online, and I went to click, yeah, I want to sign up to this credit card. Nothing happened. Again, nothing happened. Normally, customers would then just disappear somewhere else. I'm a bit more curious, so I started launching it in different browsers, and suddenly it works in other browsers. It was just the particular browser I was using. There was actually looked in the console, there was errors popping up there. But we need to know what they are, because that normal customers don't look like me and go to different browsers. They'll just disappear somewhere else and sign up somewhere else. We need to know what they are. So going from there, we need to trace those transactions. So whether they go through EC2 instances or ECS or into Lambda or wherever it is, we're looking at tracing those transactions across the application architecture to wherever they interact with the databases. Look at the infrastructure. How does the infrastructure impact those transactions across that application? So this is what we've come up with, and this is what I'm going to flip into a demo. So this is just Dynatrace monitoring a few applications in production. It effectively starts with, we've developed what we call the one agent. Now, if you've ever deployed monitoring tools before, especially APM tools, you may have deployed, say, I've got a Java application, I deploy a Java agent, I modify the Java properties and get it to include that when you restart. Same with web servers, .NET, Apache, all the rest of them. But it means you've got to deploy lots of agents manually and configure them manually. What we've done with the one agent, so this is a particular deployment on a Linux host. Now the deployment methodology may change, whether you're deploying it on a container, Lambda, EC2, whatever it is. In this example, all we've got is effectively we need two commands. The first one is the wget, to go and download the agent. The second one is an optional, just a verification. Third one is install. So that's all we have to do. That agent contains within it the smarts to figure out what everything is happening on that host or in that container. And it builds up something that we call a smart state, which is like a visual representation of all your services, processes, and hosts, how they communicate to each other. So we're not just looking at kind of what's running on what, we're looking at how they're communicating across the environment, what happens down from component to component. I'll just show you an example. So all the way from our hosts to our processes to our services and to our applications. Automatically discovered. We've not done any code changes to get this. This is just picked it up straight out of the box. Similarly with the application, so on the end user point of view, looking from an application standpoint, what is the performance we're giving to end users, or rather what they're receiving from us? Looking at what browsers they're using, when they use them. You can do things like conversion rates and bounce rates and things like that. But also looking at the service flow, or what we call the service flow. And this is just an example of what we can get into. It's tracing those transactions across the application. So from service to service, so think API calls, web service calls, and things like that. Code following that, almost like a profiler in production across tiers, on all the time. So we're harvesting a lot of information. How is this really different? We might do it with a smarter agent, we might have a great interface, and we're tracking all these transactions all the time. But how does that make it different in terms of how do I stop warrants? How do I stop or figure out what's going wrong with my environment? Well, this is why we've produced what we call problem analytics at Dynatrace. So in order to get a problem, so what we're looking at, so in order to define a problem, what we're looking for is what is impacting the end users. Pretty much every metric we capture in Dynatrace is baseline. So we've got a normal performance corridor. If we step out of that and we impact the end users or we impact a service or some infrastructure, it's then showing me how many users actually are impacted, because we're measuring every interaction from every user all the time. And I can go down and drill down to those users if I need to. I get an indication of what applications are being impacted, whether it's a browser-specific problem. So the problem I talked about earlier, where just one browser type was impacted, I could show exactly that browser was impacted, not others. But for me, more importantly, this is where Dynatrace is actually using AI and more machine learning across all the metrics it's capturing. All that relationships is effectively learned. What this is going to do is give me a root cause. So work out where it is on my application delivery chain I need to go to fix this problem. So I don't have to pull networks, databases, whoever it is, infrastructure people, into a room. I know I've got my root cause on here, which is my check destination, which is my custom code. I can drill down onto this and get into the actual code level visibility as well if I needed to. But it's just expediting that, finding other root cause, so I'm not calling people I don't need to actually address this problem. And this just works out of the box. There's nothing configuration I've had to do. It's just something that happens automatically in Dynatrace. So it's really easy to do. Just give you an example of a production. This is an example from a customer we've had. We had analysed 280 billion dependencies to figure out what the root cause was on here. This is actually a visualization of each one of these grey dots is actually an individual component or service within the application. You can play that back as a video. But really, actually the root cause is automatically worked out for us within Docker. So something like this is what we expect, really. This is 6 incidents from another customer of ours. Normally they have 70 people on at almost an hour bridge call. You know, old habits die hard. We got them down to 8 minutes for 5 people to solve the problem. And then we talk about production. This could be a test environment, could be a different environment, anything we can get the visibility on. So it doesn't have to stop with looking at the dashboards. Obviously I've showed you lots of dashboards and things like that, and I said you don't really need to do dashboards. Well, it's true. We do actually have, it's not rendered properly, but we have what we call Davis, which is a digital assistant. So we use Alexa to actually communicate with. So if you're in the car, you can just ask Davis, were there any problems yesterday? How many users were impacted? Who was it escalated to? Or even getting to trigger and say, all right, can you do some remediation? Can you take an action? As well as interacting it through Slack or HipChat, or we can publish ServiceNow CMDB with that web of everything with the Discovery, we can actually publish that into a CMDB as well. So that was a brief intro into monitoring redefined with Dynatrace. Essentially, you just need the single agent. All of this to say is available as a free trial if you want to have a go at it. Any questions?
When you're installing the agent, how does the host know that you're not a virus trying to install itself on my machine?
Sure, installing. It's a choice if you want to install it. You'll have to have permissions to install it.
Do you have both APM and what do you call it? Infrastructure modules?
We do both the infrastructure and APM. So you can still see that from the host perspective.
Do you see like the metrics, like in example AWS provide plenty of metrics of different resources. Do you all pull it up?
Yes, we pull that in as well. We harvest our own information, so we will harvest things from AWS as well. So for everything we can't install an agent on, things like EDSs and RDS and DynamoDB, we'll collect those out from CloudWatch. But we'll use that in context of all the other information. So we're never just receiving information in a silo. It has to be in context of everything else, which is what the AI works across it on. So they're all in context of everything else. Everything's going to work in harmony for your application to work correctly. That's what it does. Sorry, again.
What's the cost model
For cloud, actually in 2 ways. So if we're just talking about the agents, it's just the size of the host we're monitoring. So it's like AWS, the bigger the host, the more cost effective. Actually, if we class one host agent as a host with 16 gigs of RAM, so you just need to have one host agent. If you have 2 hosts with 8 gigs each, then you still only need one.
Will you discover the application ports automatically? I mean, how the applications are implemented?
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, tag and trace within the application. Yeah, exactly right.
And the entire map. I mean,
So I didn't give you time to render, but yeah, a map of the transaction flow, as well as that Smartscape.
So you can manage your cost by just deploying it on one host, seeing where the connections are going to, pick the host that you next want to deploy it there, see whether its connections are going, so you can reverse engineer your own infrastructure.
Exactly right. Yeah, this is what we use when we've got the transformation or the migration competency from AWS. Is when we're looking at these old on-premise systems, drop agents in, allow you to see everything, and then the Smartscape will allow you to show which components are actually good for moving pretty quickly. We see here we've got some components here that are actually separate from the main application.
It actually shows you what type of communications going out of there, where it's going
Yes.
to, how much traffic there
How
is.
much, what the request is, what the response is, whether it's good response, bad response, all of those things. Yes, exactly.
Synthetic monitoring on these networks, if there are CDNs layer, come on, does it actually distinguish between these CDNs and then the external networks?
Yeah. So I can show you this, but in the user sessions, for every user we track, so this is actually, we can do things like username recognition, so if users call in saying I'm having a problem, this is Maria. In here I get every single session of that user. If I just select a session, I then get all of the details about the operating system and browser that we're using. In there, I've got lots of things about how the page is loaded, whether it's loaded resources from CDN or third parties and things like that. But every single click will also get the full waterfall of all the resources, so all the JavaScript, CSSs and the rest of it. All of this is loaded. All of this detail is there if you want to drill down on it, but the idea of Dynatrace is going to try and keep you away from drilling down into detail. It's there if you want it. If you want to try and find the hidden needle in the haystack, it's all there. But allow the AI to automate the biggest majority of finding faults within your environment. Go ahead.
Do you have measurements across impact with Dynatrace enabled and without?
Yes, I can actually show you that as well. So we say it's the magic 2% in terms of CPU. So we monitor ourselves as well as your application. What we just going consuming processes. Dynatrace is in here as well. So we know how much resources we're consuming in there.
But in terms of the response time?
Oh, in terms of response time, it's going to be pretty much unnoticeable. If you want to get the best way to get that is just to run a load test without Dynatrace, run the same load test with Dynatrace, compare the two.
Have you seen in your labs in terms of how much is the impact with and without?
Pretty much unnoticeable. We had Telstra running this, so this is running across Telstra AFL. They've got 3 million users every 5 minutes when they're not. And they came back in terms of CPU overhead was 1.7 seconds. 1.7 seconds. Sorry, 1.7%, but it was unnoticeable in terms of response time to the end user. They will not see it.
Are these agents operating system dependent or it's programming language?
So there's an agent, I don't know if you noticed, per operating system, so Windows, Linux, Solaris, AIX. The level of visibility we can get to the code, that is language dependent, so things like Java, .NET, PHP, Node.js, Nginx, so Apache and stuff like that.
We need to add plugins for these agents to make them.
No. So that's what the one agent figures out for you. So it just detects what's running on there, and then it just drops. If it's Java, then it'll discover that it's Java and do the bytecode injection to get that code level visibility. You don't have to configure it. It just figures how it starts up.
Once you've installed the agent, you can choose which processes you want to monitor, so you don't have to monitor all of them.
Absolutely. You can scale it back if you want to. Yes.
Do you work for Dynatrace?
Not yet.
Go ahead.
How do you do user browser level?
Oh, yeah. So actually, what's actually happening is again the same agent is detecting things like a website, IIS, Apache, Node, whatever it is, and it's injecting dynamically a JavaScript tag into every page that gets requested. So that tag gets passed down with the page, allows us to gather what's actually happening within the browser, fires the information back from there. Then we can see every single click. That's how we get it.
Excellent. No more questions? Excellent, Kevin, thank you very much. One more. We take one more.
Because you mentioned that it is JavaScript injection to this, like, is that then affecting the browser side and client side to have disabled JavaScript, or it is then identified as a virus or something?
If you have the JavaScript disabled, then yeah, that's going to be pretty difficult.
But does it not flag itself as a JavaScript damage injection and virus?
No, because the JavaScript is injected with, so the agent is within on your website server, so it's being injected as just as part of the page. So to the browser, it just looks like another object that's coming down from your web server. It's no different from anything. It's not coming from elsewhere. It's coming from within your web server. Okay.
Excellent, Kevin. Thank you very much. You're hanging around for a bit.
Yeah, I'll be around, so if you need me.
Yeah. So any questions, just come and talk to me. Thank you very much. Excellent. So, has everybody signed in for the prize draw? Yeah. We had a new sign-in system this evening, so thank you for letting us know what you thought of it. But we're going to try and use that next month. That's for the echo at the end. We're hiring at the moment, so if you're looking for a job, come talk to us or go to the website and put in your details and grab yourself a drink, have some pizza, and we'll come back with Richard, who's still with us from Cloudhouse. Excellent. Thanks, everyone.